Namaste, family and friends. Welcome again to Heavenly Couples True Love Culture, Divine Consciousness, Family Dialogue. Again, this is the Divine Dialogue into Divine Discovery. Join us as we continue to unveil our divine identity beyond belief systems. Let's get with it. Welcome. Namaste. Peace. Shalom. Salam alaikum. Hotel means I and you are one.
What if the very essence of who we are, like our deepest identity, isn't something we have to earn or achieve or even label? What if it's just something fundamental that we simply are? Today, we're taking a deep dive into this really profound concept, divine identity, and how it fundamentally challenges our usual ideas about belief, religion, and maybe most importantly, how we actually connect with each other.
Exactly. And our mission here.
And I want to start that again. I want to start it from the beginning as I welcome you again to this wonderful way of learning together. Just pay attention. This is the Sunday True Love Culture University, inspired by Heavenly Couples in Ministry.
What if the very essence of who we are, like our deepest identity, isn't something we have to earn or achieve or even label? What if it's just something fundamental that we simply are? Today, we're taking a deep dive into this really profound concept, divine identity, and how it fundamentally challenges our usual ideas about belief, religion, and maybe most importantly, how we actually connect with each other.
Exactly. And our mission here, in this deep dive is to explore a really fascinating stack of sources. We've got excerpts from Embracing Divine Identity, another called On the Enforcement of Beliefs.
Yeah.
And How to Return to Embodiment of Divinity, Love God, Our Shared Identity. Quite a title there.
Yeah.
And also The Divinity of Our Shared Humanity is Beyond Belief. Now, these texts, they aren't just like presenting an idea. They're really urging us to consider a powerful reframe, inviting you, the listener, to truly reflect on what it means to live in alignment with this core truth. They suggest our true identity isn't really found in, say, rigid dogmas or the divisions we tend to create, but in something universal, a shared divinity that's expressed most powerfully through love and, crucially, through action.
Okay, let's unpack this, because reading through these, one thing jumped out at me immediately. This divine identity they talk about, it isn't about popularity, right? Or accumulating power or trying to have dominion over others.
No.
So if it's none of those things we often chase, what is it then, according to these pretty profound texts?
Well, the sources really hit us with a core definition almost straight away. They describe our divine identity as like the bedrock of our true reality.
Bedrock.
Yeah, something that just is and always is. It's immutable, always present, and crucially, it's an identity that is always sharing for the sake of all.
Always sharing. That's such a powerful distinction, isn't it? Because it immediately pushes back against, well, our modern metrics of success, which so often prioritize individual gain or, external validation over the collective good.
Absolutely. And what's truly fascinating here is how this divine identity actually manifests. These texts, they illuminate that it's plainly and clearly reflective in the acts and speech we give to and about others.
So it's visible.
It is, but maybe not in the way we think. It's not something we necessarily broadcast. In fact, the material emphasizes that it's most times silent and unseen, doing good, underground, unbeknownst to the loud and the proud.
Interesting. Like quiet action.
Exactly. It highlights an internal, action-based reflection rather than, say, external recognition. It's much more about being rather than performing for an audience. It just fundamentally shifts our focus from what we get from the world to what we give.
And that idea, that leads us right to what I found to be the absolute core tenet here. It's a really powerful insight. Our sacred identity, how we are truly known, to the world and to what the sources call God, is by how we love one another. And the material makes it so clear this goes way beyond doctrinal rituals to simply caring as in loving. It feels like a call to consciously, deliberately align ourselves with this shared divinity through just our everyday actions.
Indeed. And these texts, they don't shy away from connecting the dots. They state it directly. our divine identity is love.
Wow. Okay.
They tell us that we, as humans, actually represent the highest wholesome nature of the divine creator, and we're here to emerge in life with the designer, God-conscious awareness.
God-conscious awareness.
Yeah, and they use this incredibly vivid imagery describing us as offspring, physical replicas of spirit beings robed in divine terracotta, earth's precious dusty dirt we call flesh, blood, and bones to house the divine as a living soul.
That's quite poetic.
It is, isn't it? It's a beautiful way of saying our physical bodies are sacred vessels housing this divine essence. But, this raises a really important, almost provocative question for you listening. If this identity is so inherent, so fundamental, how do our current systems, our established beliefs, and all the divisions we constantly create, how do they manage to obscure it so effectively?
That's the perfect segue, actually, because these sources immediately start challenging those very divisions. They pose this thought experiment using a beautiful river analogy. They ask, does the river entering the ocean lose its identity, or is its identity still ever present within the ocean? Now, that isn't just a metaphor, right? It feels like a profound invitation to consider that separate identities can still be an intrinsic part of a larger unified whole, a truth maybe we often miss in our world.
Precisely. And the material critically examines the folly of enforcing beliefs. It states quite directly, if we are to enforce the different beliefs, belief sentiments, and systems with the devotion of a fundamentalist like heart mind, we therefore can't say, nor will many ever agree, that we are all created by God.
So forcing beliefs actually prevents unity.
That's exactly what they're arguing. They link this dogmatic enforcement directly to division. They even go so far as to call certain believers cult-like in their inability to recognize others as siblings.
Strong language.
It is. So the sources are essentially saying that this whole notion of competing deities or rival truths, it isn't divine in origin at all. It's actually a product of human pride and our attachment to old, perhaps misinterpreted narratives of faith. It's a really strong condemnation of exclusivity.
And it really makes you think about all the, the wars of the gods throughout history, or even the subtle divisions we see today right here in our communities. The sources ask directly, is God whole or divided into several almighty gods? And they challenge us personally, too. Am I a Christian, Muslim, Jew, or Hindu because God said so, or because I read in a book, or a religious leader told me so? Or is it God who labeled us in such lesser, low-level identity? It's just so clear the texts see these man-made labels as obscuring our shared divinity. They're basically suggesting these aren't divine labels at all, but human constructs that keep us from seeing our deeper connection.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the material presents the Abrahamic faiths as almost a kind of testing ground for this unfortunate divisive state of believers.
A testing ground. Okay.
Yeah, the sources argue that the whole idea of 2 or 3 different sources or gods fighting for authority actually stems from human fallen ego and outdated script.
Outdated script.
So what this means is that these divisions, they aren't God's intention, according to these texts. They're more the result of human interpretations, our attachments to specific narratives, and maybe a kind of collective pride. What's illuminated here is that our interpretations, rather than some divine intention, seem to be the real architects of these profound divides. It's really a call to look beyond literal text to the universal intention behind it.
Okay, so if this is our true identity, this shared divinity, and if getting hung up on beliefs is the source of so much division, what does this all mean for us, like personally? How do we live this?
Well, the texts urge us to move beyond just believing things and to actively seek to know.
Believing versus knowing, that's a big shift.
It's a profound shift, yeah. It echoes that gospel cry, Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. It's like saying it's not enough to just intellectually agree with a creed. It's about seeking an intimate, lived, and embodied knowledge.
Right. So internalizing it so deeply that it actually shapes who you are.
Exactly. And this knowing manifests in a really powerful way. The sources explain that unchanging empathy that breeds divine compassion surely arises from within when we acknowledge God's presence in all people.
Empathy and compassion arising from within.
Yes. And without recognizing the divine in others, what some traditions call namaste, the divine in me recognizing the divine in you, they argue that genuine welfare development is basically impossible. This naturally leads to Ubuntu, that powerful African philosophy.
Ubuntu, yes. I am because we are.
Precisely. It beautifully emphasizes our mutual value and how interconnected we all are. It's really about understanding that our individual well-being is just intrinsically tied to the well-being of everyone else in the whole.
And this idea of universal siblinghood, it's echoed in some profound statements cited in these sources, drawing from really diverse traditions. We hear things like, killing one life is like killing all humankind, which comes from Islam. And Jesus' call to love thine enemy. These aren't just, nice poetic phrases. The implication feels crystal clear. We were never supposed to be enemies forged by any forms of beliefs, but actually a single human family. Makes you wonder how much progress we've stifled by clinging so hard to those distinctions.
It really does. The material synthesizes this purpose beautifully by saying, life as we know is designed for mutual prosperity of the soul, not for individual vainglory, rather for the collective glory of the divine in each other.
Mutual prosperity of the soul, not individual vainglory. That's countercultural.
Deeply. It highlights our true identity as divinity seeking a physical expression. And they remind us that the Genesis account describes humans created in the image and likeness of God as a very good deed, urging us to cherish this rather than getting caught up in narratives of exclusivity of a jealous God. It truly reframes our understanding of our divine origin as one of shared abundance and inherent goodness, not scarcity or competition.
So if that's what we are, this inherent loving shared divine identity, how do we actually live it? How do we make it real day to day?
Well, the sources encourage us to see religion, like science, a means to an end, not the end product God or life wants to grace us with.
A means to an end, like a tool.
Exactly. True religion, they say, is actually about rejoining our true selves, relinking with the divine. So it's not primarily about adhering to a set of external rules, but about embodying an internal truth.
Okay, so embodying it. How?
This brings us to what the sources call the divine charge. We are essentially to Emmanuelize.
Emmanuelize. Okay, that's a new word for me. What does that mean?
It's not common, no, but it literally means to become God with us, to actively embody the real presence of love and compassion right here in our homes and our communities.
Wow.
It means our divinity of our identity is seen in our humanity as true love beings in healthy heavenly relationships with people, places, things, and all situations. So it's this active everyday manifestation of our core identity, turning abstract belief into something tangible, something real.
What's really striking, though, is how these sources push back against such a common modern goal. They challenge the whole idea of making a living when, well, we are already living beings.
Right.
They even go as far as calling us the living dead if we're not truly aware of life and our divine presence within it. That's a pretty provocative statement, isn't it?
It really is.
Because, as they point out, living is always a communal act. It's not about just isolated striving for personal gain, but about realizing how interconnected we are.
And the power of this real presence they describe is genuinely transformative. They say, when we are fully present with each other without a label, something magical always transpires. Yeah, because real presence engages us with fully paid, debt-free, heavenly, holistic attention, which they say is just another phrase for loving, caring kindness. It's about letting our authentic, true self shine forth, as directed in Matthew chapter 5. This kind of presence, it isn't just about physically showing up. It's about being fully invested, in the moment, in the other person, in the situation. It's a profound gift we can give each other.
But the sources are also pretty critical of modern tendencies that seem to work directly against this. They observe an identity grind crisis and weak minds going after popular brands and branding for political, religious, or economic gain. It really makes you wonder, especially in our social media-driven world, how much of our presented identity is truly authentic versus just a brand we're trying to sell.
That's a sharp observation.
And they really warn against what they call God brands and labels for sale on the top shelves of our bruised, broken, yet unconsciously brazenly polished, vain egos. They argue these labels just divide us and are never good and can never be God in divine presence. They're basically telling us these external affiliations we cling to might actually be obscuring the very divine truth they often claim to represent.
And this kind of embodiment, this achieving real presence, it requires something significant. It requires the transformation and renewing of the mind first, as stated in Romans 12.2.
Transformation of the mind, okay.
Yeah, it's about a really profound internal shift, moving from darkness to light, and ultimately making heaven out of ourselves as children of God. It's like an internal renovation project that then impacts every single external interaction, turning our everyday lives into a reflection of this divine identity we've been talking about.
We've been talking about real presence as this active embodiment in our lives. Now, traditionally, some spiritual paths have explored this idea through very specific rituals. How do our sources here engage with those established concepts?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the sources do indeed look at ideas like the Roman Catholic doctrine of transubstantiation.
Right, the Eucharist.
Exactly. Where in that tradition, the bread and wine are believed to literally become the body and blood of Christ within the ritual. They see this as one way some traditions have conceptualized real presence. But this is crucial. They immediately expand on it. They urge us to see real presence, not just in ceremony, but really in everyday human interaction.
So taking it out of the church or temple and into the street.
Pretty much. They suggest that our divinity of our identity is a shared one and is seen in our shared humanity as true loving light beings following the path of righteousness that's moving humanity away from doctrinal, ritualistic, ceremonial attendance towards the omnious, holistic lifestyle of real presence.
The omnious holistic lifestyle. I like that.
Me too. It's about being the true embodiment of God's image and likeness beyond the call of institutionalized priesthood. It democratizes it in a way.
Yeah. Okay, so to illustrate this real presence in action, outside of a formal ritual, our sources point directly to a really timeless story. The parable of the Good Samaritan. That's from Luke chapter 10.
Ah, yes. Classic.
For anyone who might need a quick refresher, Jesus is asked by a lawyer, basically, what do I have to do to get eternal life? Jesus points him to loving God and neighbor. But then the lawyer, wanting to kind of justify himself, asks that key question. And who is my neighbor? Which is a question, let's be honest, many of us still grapple with today.
Absolutely. And the parable unfolds so beautifully, doesn't it? It tells of a man attacked by robbers, left for dead on the road. Then a priest comes by, sees him, crosses the road. Then a Levite, another religious figure, does the same thing.
Yeah, the people you'd expect to help don't.
Exactly. But then a Samaritan comes along. Now, this is key, because Samaritans were social outsiders, even despised by the Jewish people of that time. But he was moved with compassion.
Moved with compassion, not just pity, but action.
Precisely. He didn't just feel bad, he acted. He went over, bound the man's wounds, poured oil and wine on them, which was practical first aid back then, put the man on his own animal, took him to an inn, and even paid the innkeeper to ensure his continued care.
Incredible generosity.
Truly. And the crucial takeaway for that lawyer, and the sources argue for us, is that the neighbor wasn't defined by tribe or creed, but was simply the one who showed mercy. It wasn't about his status, his religious affiliation, or his background. It was purely about his compassionate action in that moment.
And Jesus' simple, direct command at the end, go and do thou likewise, is presented by these sources as the very essence of our divine charge. It's such a powerful, actionable instruction for how to embody our divine identity. So how does the Samaritan's specific actions demonstrate this real presence and this Emmanuelizing we've been discussing in a way that maybe just believing something can't?
Well, that's a perfect point. The Samaritan didn't just offer a prayer from across the road, right?
No.
He got his hands dirty, literally. Yeah. He used his resources, his oil, his wine, his animal, his money, his time. He actively embodied God with us in that specific moment for someone he had every social reason to ignore or even despise. His omnious holistic lifestyle, as the source puts it, wasn't demonstrated by attending a ceremony. It was about being fully present to another human being's suffering and acting as a conduit for divine love, for practical care. It grounded the abstract idea of love into tangible, life-saving action. That proactive, empathetic service is the bridge.
Exactly. So the broader implication here, according to these texts, is that we are all positioned and graced by God to be the bridge, bridge the gaps between us and them, the we and they mentality. It's a call, especially for those of us who claim to be of God in whatever tradition, to legislate maybe, meaning conduct ourselves with the compassionate competence to see the world as one constituency, one world, one love, one people, one human race.
One human race.
Yeah. Our work, the sources seem to urge, is to help others feel and then come to know God's real presence through each one of us, starting right in our homes and then extending that out into every single interaction we have. It's really about becoming that tangible manifestation of love in the world.
Wow. What a journey we've really taken today. We've explored how our divine identity isn't something earned, but an inherent state of love. We've seen how getting stuck on divisive beliefs can hinder genuine unity. And we've dug into how truly knowing God means actively embodying empathy and compassion in every interaction, essentially making that real presence felt by others.
Yeah, and the core message from these powerful sources just couldn't be clearer, could it? They really challenge us to move beyond just superficial labels and, maybe just going through the motions of rituals. They urge us to actually become real presence in our daily lives, reflecting God's goodness wherever we go. It's about active, loving kindness, isn't it? Something that requires that transformation of the mind we talked about, not just intellectual agreement or outward displays of piety that might lack that inner substance.
Absolutely. So, as you go about your day, maybe after listening to this, we invite you to just ponder this thought. What if embracing our inherent divine identity, not as some label to wear proudly, but as an active, loving presence to embody? What if that is the ultimate form of making heaven on earth? Not just for ourselves, but actually for every single person we encounter. We invite you to carry that thought and perhaps more importantly, that presence with you.
Once again, thank you for your time, paying attention to the Heavenly Couples Conscious Souls conversation. I pray something said today through the conversation will continue to help us to uncover the real presence of the divine always amongst us. Once again, I greet you with these wonderful words that allows us to be more. Namaste, peace, shalom, salam, shanti, hotep. May the true love of God continue to guide us as one human family in love, in God, living Christ-like. As we prepare to enter into the next session,